You wake up feeling heavy, foggy, and tired no matter how much you sleep, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder if your body is quietly overwhelmed by the constant load of processed food, stress, and hidden toxins. What if the issue is not your willpower, but an overworked liver asking for support? Today, we uncover the 3-day reset that can truly help your body recover. The idea of cleaning your liver in 72 hours sounds almost too good to be true, especially in a world where detox teas, juice fasts, and dramatic before and after photos promise instant transformation, yet leave most people confused about what is real and what is marketing. Before you decide whether this can work, you need to understand what the liver actually does every single minute of your life, because once you understand its role, the entire concept of a 3-day reset becomes much clearer and far more practical. Your liver is not a passive filter that simply collects toxins like a sponge waiting to be squeezed, and it does not store mysterious waste that can be flushed out with a single drink or supplement. It is an active, intelligent processing center that regulates blood sugar, metabolizes fats, breaks down hormones, neutralizes alcohol, converts ammonia into safer compounds, produces bile for digestion, and manages hundreds of chemical reactions that keep you alive and stable. When people say they want to clean their liver, what they are really expressing is a desire to feel lighter, clearer, less inflamed, and more energized, because those are the sensations that reflect better liver performance. So can you truly clean your liver in 72 hours? The honest answer is that you cannot scrub it clean like a surface, but you can dramatically reduce the stress placed on it, improve the efficiency of its detox pathways, and create measurable changes in inflammation and metabolic balance within that time frame. The liver has an extraordinary ability to regenerate and adapt, but it needs the right signals to shift from overload mode into recovery mode, and those signals come from what you remove and what you provide. Most people underestimate how quickly the liver responds to change, because they assume damage accumulates slowly and therefore improvement must also be slow, yet the body is remarkably responsive when the burden is lifted. When alcohol is removed, when added sugars are reduced, when blood sugar swings are stabilized, and when sleep improves even slightly, liver enzymes can begin trending in a healthier direction in a matter of days. This does not mean that chronic conditions reverse overnight, but it does mean that function can improve faster than most people expect. Another misconception is that detox requires extreme restriction, which often leads to fatigue, headaches, and rebound overeating that ultimately places more strain on the liver than before. A true 72-hour reset is not about starving the body or shocking the system, but about aligning with the liver's natural biology by reducing incoming toxins, supporting nutrient-dependent detox pathways, and improving elimination through hydration and fiber. When you approach it this way, the process becomes logical instead of dramatic. To fully answer the question in the title, cleaning your liver in 72 hours really means creating a focused window where inflammation decreases, fat metabolism improves, bile flow becomes more efficient, and oxidative stress is lowered through targeted nutrition and lifestyle shifts. These internal changes often show up as clearer thinking, reduced bloating, more stable energy, and a subtle sense of internal lightness that feels different from temporary stimulant-driven alertness. What makes this powerful is not the short duration itself, but the clarity it provides, because 3 days is long enough to produce noticeable shifts, yet short enough to commit fully without feeling overwhelmed. When you experience how quickly your body responds to intelligent support, it changes the way you view your health, and it proves that your liver is not fragile or failing, but responsive and resilient when given the chance. In the chapters ahead, you will see exactly how to create that shift step by step, not through extremes or gimmicks, but through biological principles that work with your body instead of against it, so that the promise of a 72-hour reset becomes grounded in science rather than hype. Most people assume that liver problems begin with extreme behavior, yet in reality the overload usually builds quietly through ordinary daily habits that seem harmless on their own, but become powerful when repeated without interruption. The liver does not struggle because of a single heavy meal or one stressful week. It struggles because it is asked to process more than it can comfortably manage day after day, without enough recovery time to restore balance. One of the most common burdens placed on the liver is excess sugar, particularly in the form of sweetened beverages, processed snacks, and refined carbohydrates that rapidly elevate blood glucose and force the body to convert the surplus into stored fat. When this pattern becomes consistent, fat begins accumulating inside liver cells themselves, a condition often referred to as fatty liver, and this accumulation interferes with the organ's ability to efficiently process toxins, hormones, and metabolic waste. Even people who never touch alcohol can experience this pattern simply through high sugar intake combined with low physical activity. Alcohol adds another layer of strain because it demands priority processing, meaning the liver temporarily shifts its attention away from other tasks in order to break down ethanol into less harmful compounds. During that time, fat metabolism slows, inflammatory byproducts increase, and oxidative stress rises within liver tissue, especially when consumption is frequent rather than occasional. The body can tolerate moderate exposure when given recovery time, but consistent intake leaves little opportunity for repair. Highly processed foods contribute to overload in a more subtle but equally important way because they often contain additives, preservatives, seed oils, and artificial ingredients that require detoxification even if they are approved for consumption. Each compound must be metabolized, transformed, and prepared for elimination, and while the liver is equipped to do this work, it performs best when nutrient density is high and inflammatory load is low. When the diet lacks antioxidants, fiber, and key micronutrients, detox pathways may still function, but they operate less efficiently and generate more internal stress. Sleep deprivation is another underestimated factor that directly affects liver performance, because many detoxification processes follow circadian rhythms and are more active at night when the body is at rest. When sleep is fragmented or shortened, hormonal regulation shifts, insulin sensitivity decreases and inflammatory markers rise, all of which increase metabolic strain on the liver. Chronic stress compounds this issue by elevating cortisol, which influences blood sugar and fat storage patterns in ways that place additional demands on hepatic metabolism. Medications, while often necessary and beneficial, also require processing through liver enzymes, and long-term use of certain drugs increases the workload placed on detox pathways. This does not mean medication should be avoided without medical guidance, but it does highlight the importance of supporting the liver through lifestyle measures that reduce other avoidable stressors. When you look at these factors together, a clear pattern emerges, because overload is rarely dramatic and almost always cumulative. A sugary breakfast, a sedentary afternoon, a processed dinner, a glass of wine, and insufficient sleep may each seem minor, yet combined, they create a continuous stream of metabolic tasks that limit the liver's ability to shift into repair mode. Over time, this constant demand can contribute to inflammation, sluggish digestion, hormonal imbalance, and persistent fatigue that many people attribute to aging rather than to metabolic stress. Understanding what truly overloads the liver is empowering rather than discouraging, because it reveals that relief does not require extreme measures or expensive supplements, but rather the strategic removal of everyday stressors that have been quietly stacking up. When you reduce these inputs, even for a focused 72-hour window, you are not performing a magical cleanse. You are giving your liver the breathing space it needs to recalibrate, restore efficiency, and remind you just how responsive your body can be when it is supported instead of overwhelmed. The first day of a true liver reset is not about adding exotic powders or forcing dramatic changes, but about deliberately reducing the incoming workload so that your liver can shift from constant processing into partial recovery. When you remove the most common stressors for even 24 hours, the internal environment begins to change in ways that are measurable, practical, and often surprisingly noticeable. The most immediate step on day one is eliminating alcohol entirely, because alcohol demands priority metabolism and temporarily diverts the liver's resources away from fat regulation and toxin neutralization. When alcohol is absent, the liver can redirect energy toward restoring antioxidant balance and improving metabolic flexibility, which is the ability to switch between burning carbohydrates and fats efficiently. Even one day without alcohol can lower internal oxidative stress and begin normalizing certain liver enzyme activities. The second major focus is stabilizing blood sugar by removing added sugars and refined carbohydrates that create rapid spikes and crashes. When blood glucose rises sharply, insulin surges and excess sugar is converted into fat, through a process called de novo lipogenesis, which directly contributes to fat storage within liver cells. By choosing whole foods such as vegetables, moderate portions of fruit, lean proteins, legumes, and minimally processed grains, you prevent unnecessary fat production and reduce inflammatory signaling that burdens hepatic tissue. Hydration becomes a central pillar on this first day because the liver relies on adequate fluid balance to process and transport metabolic byproducts. Water supports circulation, improves bile consistency, and assists the kidneys in eliminating water-soluble waste that the liver has already transformed. Increasing water intake evenly throughout the day helps maintain blood volume and supports smoother toxin clearance without stressing the digestive system. Protein intake is another essential component because many detoxification reactions in the liver depend on amino acids, particularly those involved in phase 2 conjugation pathways. These pathways attach specific molecules to toxins so they can be safely excreted rather than recirculated. When protein intake is too low, these processes can become less efficient, which is why balanced meals containing fish, eggs, poultry, tofu, or legumes are important during a reset rather than restrictive fasting that deprives the body of building blocks. Fiber also plays a crucial role on day 1 because it binds certain waste products in the digestive tract and supports regular elimination. If toxins are processed by the liver but not properly eliminated through bowel movements, they can be reabsorbed into circulation, increasing the total burden. Including leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, seeds, and legumes helps ensure that elimination keeps pace with detox activity. Gentle movement adds another layer of support because physical activity improves circulation and enhances insulin sensitivity, which reduces the demand placed on the liver for blood sugar regulation. A brisk walk, light resistance exercises, or stretching sessions can increase oxygen delivery and stimulate lymphatic flow without creating excessive stress that would counteract the goal of recovery. By the end of the first 24 hours, you may not feel dramatically transformed, but subtle changes often begin to appear in digestion, mental clarity, and energy stability. What is happening beneath the surface is more important than any immediate sensation, because inflammatory markers are beginning to decrease, fat production is slowing, and antioxidant systems are being replenished. Day 1 works because it stops the constant incoming wave of metabolic stress and gives the liver a rare opportunity to focus on maintenance rather than survival. This strategic pause sets the foundation for the deeper activation that follows, ensuring that the next phase of the 72-hour reset builds on a stable and supportive internal environment, rather than on temporary deprivation or extremes. By the second day, the internal environment has already shifted in subtle but meaningful ways, because the incoming burden has been reduced and blood sugar fluctuations have begun to stabilize. Now the focus moves from unloading stress to actively supporting the biochemical systems that transform toxins into forms that can be safely eliminated. This is where science becomes practical, because the liver detoxifies through highly organized pathways that depend on specific nutrients and conditions to function efficiently. The liver processes toxins in 2 broad stages, often referred to as Phase 1 and Phase 2 detoxification, and understanding this sequence helps explain why certain foods and habits matter so much during this reset. In the first phase, enzymes modify toxins through oxidation and other reactions that make them more chemically reactive, which may sound beneficial but actually creates intermediate compounds that can be temporarily more irritating than the original substances. This is why Phase 2 support is essential, because the second phase attaches protective molecules to those intermediates, rendering them water-soluble and ready for excretion through bile or urine. Protein once again becomes critical on this day because amino acids such as glycine, cysteine, and glutamine are required for Phase 2 reactions that neutralize reactive compounds. Including quality protein sources ensures that the liver has access to these building blocks, allowing detox pathways to proceed smoothly instead of slowing down due to nutritional gaps. Sulfur-containing foods such as garlic, onions, eggs, and cruciferous vegetables contribute additional support because sulfur groups are directly involved in conjugation processes that protect liver cells from oxidative stress. Leafy greens and brightly colored vegetables provide antioxidants that counteract free radicals generated during detox reactions, which helps prevent cellular damage while toxins are being processed. Compounds found in broccoli, kale, and Brussels sprouts also stimulate the production of enzymes that enhance detox capacity, effectively signaling the liver to increase its protective response. These foods do not force detoxification beyond natural limits, but they optimize pathways that are already built into human biology. Magnesium and other micronutrients play a quieter yet equally important role because many enzymatic reactions require mineral cofactors to proceed efficiently. When magnesium levels are low due to chronic stress or poor dietary intake, metabolic processes including detoxification can become less coordinated. Ensuring adequate intake through food sources such as leafy greens, nuts, seeds, and legumes supports the smooth progression of both energy production and toxin neutralization. Sleep quality becomes especially important on day 2 because the body relies on nighttime repair cycles to regulate inflammation and hormone balance. Deep sleep supports growth hormone release and cellular repair mechanisms that indirectly improve liver resilience. When you protect sleep by limiting late-night screen exposure and maintaining a consistent schedule, you amplify the effects of nutritional support and give detox pathways the stability they need to function efficiently. Gentle movement continues to matter because improved circulation enhances nutrient delivery to liver cells and facilitates the transport of processed waste toward elimination routes. Light exercise also improves insulin sensitivity further, reducing metabolic strain and reinforcing the improvements initiated on the first day. By the end of day 2, many people notice clearer thinking, reduced bloating, and more consistent energy. Not because toxins have been dramatically flushed out, but because inflammation has decreased and metabolic pathways are operating with less friction. The liver is no longer overwhelmed and is now functioning closer to its natural capacity, supported by adequate nutrients and restorative habits. This phase is powerful because it moves beyond simply removing harm and begins strengthening internal defenses, ensuring that detoxification is efficient, balanced, and aligned with the body's design, rather than driven by extreme or artificial methods. By the 3rd day, the internal shift is no longer subtle, because the liver has already experienced a measurable reduction in inflammatory load and metabolic pressure, and now the focus turns toward one of its most underestimated functions, which is the production and movement of bile. Bile is not simply a digestive fluid that helps break down fats, it is also one of the primary routes through which the liver escorts processed waste out of the body, making its proper flow essential to the success of any true reset. When toxins are transformed inside liver cells, many of them are packaged into bile and released into the digestive tract, where they must continue moving forward rather than stagnating. If bile flow is sluggish due to poor diet, dehydration, or insufficient dietary fat, waste products can linger longer than they should, increasing the chance of reabsorption and creating a sense of heaviness or bloating that people often misinterpret as random digestive discomfort. Supporting bile flow on day 3 ensures that the work accomplished during the first 2 days actually leads to effective elimination. Healthy fats become strategic on this day because moderate intake stimulates bile release from the gallbladder, which keeps the system active and responsive. Including sources such as olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, and fatty fish provides the necessary signal for bile to move while also supplying anti-inflammatory compounds that protect liver tissue. This is not about consuming excessive fat, but about including enough to maintain proper digestive signaling and metabolic balance. Bitter foods also deserve attention because compounds found in arugula, dandelion greens, and certain herbs naturally stimulate digestive secretions and support bile dynamics. These foods gently encourage the digestive system to function efficiently without forcing extreme reactions, aligning with the principle that support works better than shock. When bile flows consistently, fat-soluble toxins can exit the body more effectively, reducing the likelihood of recirculation. Fiber remains essential because once bile-carrying waste enters the intestines, fiber binds to it and facilitates removal through regular bowel movements. Without adequate fiber, processed toxins may not leave as efficiently, undermining the progress made during earlier phases. Including vegetables, legumes, seeds, and whole plant foods helps create the bulk and movement required for proper elimination. Day 3 also reinforces metabolic flexibility, which is the body's ability to efficiently burn fat for energy rather than relying solely on carbohydrates. As blood sugar has stabilized and inflammatory signals have decreased over the previous days, insulin sensitivity improves, allowing stored fat to be mobilized more effectively. This shift reduces fat accumulation within liver cells and supports healthier lipid processing overall. Hydration continues to play a supporting role because bile consistency depends on adequate fluid balance, and proper circulation ensures that nutrients and waste products move efficiently through the body. Gentle physical activity such as walking or light stretching enhances circulation and further supports digestive motility, reinforcing elimination pathways without introducing excessive stress. By the end of the third day, the changes many people notice include flatter digestion, steadier energy, reduced cravings for sugar, and a clearer mental state that feels grounded rather than artificially stimulated. These sensations are not the result of a dramatic purge, but of improved coordination between detox pathways, bile flow, blood sugar regulation, and inflammation control. This final phase completes the 72-hour reset by ensuring that detoxification does not end at transformation inside the liver, but continues all the way through elimination. When bile moves efficiently and fat metabolism improves, the liver operates with greater clarity and resilience, demonstrating that meaningful improvement can occur within a focused window when the process is grounded in biology rather than hype. By the time you reach the end of 72 hours, the most important shift is not something you can measure with a dramatic before and after photo, but something you feel internally as a reduction in friction throughout your body. The promise of cleaning your liver in 3 days was never about washing away years of damage overnight, but about creating conditions that allow your liver to function more efficiently, with less inflammation, better metabolic control, and stronger detox coordination. One of the earliest noticeable changes is improved energy stability, because blood sugar fluctuations have been minimized and insulin sensitivity has begun to normalize. When your liver is not constantly converting excess sugar into fat or scrambling to process alcohol and additives, it can regulate glucose release more smoothly, which translates into fewer crashes and less dependence on caffeine or snacks to stay alert. This steady energy often feels calm rather than wired, and that difference is a sign of metabolic balance rather than stimulation. Digestion frequently improves within this window because bile flow has been supported and fiber intake has increased, allowing processed waste to move efficiently through the intestines. Many people report reduced bloating, lighter abdominal sensation, and more regular elimination, which reflects the fact that detoxification does not stop at transformation inside the liver, but requires complete removal from the body. When elimination is consistent, the internal environment feels less congested. Mental clarity is another common outcome, and while it may seem unrelated to liver health, it is deeply connected to inflammation and blood sugar regulation. When inflammatory signals decrease and glucose remains stable, the brain receives a more consistent supply of energy, leading to sharper focus and improved mood stability. This clarity is often described as a quiet sense of mental space, where thoughts feel organized rather than scattered. You may also notice subtle changes in appetite and cravings, especially a reduced desire for overly sweet or processed foods. This shift occurs because taste receptors and reward pathways recalibrate quickly when high sugar intake is paused, and because stable blood sugar reduces the urgency that drives impulsive eating. As cravings decrease, long-term habits become easier to maintain. It is important to understand that significant structural changes such as reversing advanced fatty liver require longer commitment, but measurable improvements in liver enzyme levels and inflammatory markers can begin within days when stressors are removed and supportive nutrients are provided. The 72-hour reset works because it interrupts the cycle of overload and initiates a trajectory toward recovery, proving that the body responds rapidly when given the opportunity. The deeper result is psychological as much as physical, because experiencing tangible improvements in such a short period restores confidence in your body's resilience. Instead of viewing your liver as fragile or permanently damaged, you begin to see it as responsive and capable of adaptation when supported intelligently. That shift in perspective encourages consistency beyond 3 days, which is where lasting change truly develops. This reset was never meant to be a one-time event, but a demonstration of how strategic removal of stressors and targeted support can create momentum. If you choose to extend these habits into a longer-term pattern, the benefits compound over weeks and months, reinforcing healthier metabolism, improved digestion, and stronger detox capacity. As we close, remember that your liver has been working for you every second of your life without complaint, filtering, regulating, protecting, and adapting to the choices you make daily. Giving it 72 hours of focused support is not about chasing a trend, but about honoring the organ that quietly sustains your energy, clarity, and vitality. If this reset opened your eyes to how responsive your body can be, continue building on that momentum with small, consistent actions that protect and nourish your system. Stay curious about how you feel, stay intentional about what you consume, and remember that real transformation begins not with extremes, but with understanding and alignment.